Finally, the day has come to slap that engine back in. It's all ready to go. I got everything cleaned up. I just pulled the ECM out, put it up there. I think I might pull the oil tank out too. I think it's just worth it at this point for how much room it takes up and the access that it's going to block. Anyways, I'll start by just setting the engine in there. That first coolant line is going to be the first thing that I'll hook up probably. Then I've got a lot of little hoses that had those constant tension clamps on. Some had those things that I guess technically you can reuse them. I don't have the pinch tool at home here to put them back together, so I'm just going to try and get maybe some small zip ties, and I'll put those on the lines, because I noticed that, see, some have this style of clamp on them. I don't have any that small enough, the 1/8 size, but other ones just had these just had zip ties on them, holding them on. So I think that'll be just fine. I might just use some zip ties. So I got our oil injection and stuff, and the ones that go to the bearings and the block I've got to put back on, so hopefully at least I can reference my first video and see where they all go if I forget. But they all kind of lay down where they're going to meet up with everything. So that's going to be the first things, as you saw in disassembly, last things that were disconnected, so that's going to be the first things connected. So that thing's cleaned up a little bit of coolant laying around in there leaking out. I'm probably going to put a little bit of guard on this hose underneath there. I got some. It's not as big as I would have liked, but it'll help, because that one definitely is going to, it makes contact with the belly pan there and potentially could wear. Okay, going to stack that engine in here. Boy, this is nice. I hope it goes together well and I get this done soon. Engine's sitting back in frame now. So a few things that you want to take note of if you're doing this is, what I like to do when I take an engine out is, the first thing that you usually do is bolt your engine mounts back together. That's usually the last thing you do when you pull the engine out. So it's reverse assembly is the reverse of disassembly, as it's always stated in manuals and stuff. Anyway, this one, while the engine's still partially out, so the clutch stub was probably 3-4 inches out of the frame still. Set the engine in there, get it wiggled into where you can start bolting it back together. But first, before you get it right slid into the mounts, hook up your oil line underneath there. So there's one that's going to go to your water pump cavity. It's a clear oil line. It goes up to here. Then you're going to want to hook up both of your crankcase, your bearing oil lines that are down there. So I just put zip ties on them. Those zip ties are tight, just as tight. I got as much confidence in those as any type of little clamp like that would have, or those constant tension ones that it came with. So anyways, hook those up while the engine's kind of sitting. You can roll the engine forward if these front mounts still aren't on. So you want to do that before you get it fully put into the chassis. The other thing is, so you're going to have to prop it up somehow, put something underneath the engine. I use a hammer handle between the frame and the engine here, and then you got to put your mount back in, Loctite on these bolts, 13 your head on them. Then down here, this side's the part, the exhaust side or the mag side is the one that's tough, because you can see that bottom bolt. Hopefully you can see it. It's light in there. See, it's right behind. You just see the head of it there. It's right behind the coolant hose. So this hose is going to be in your way. You got to push it down and aside. So don't hook up your coolant hose to your water pump yet. Get those two bolts in. They're the same 13mm head, and then you got your front mount on. The rear mount's lined up. So your engine is lined up, and you're ready to start hooking everything back up again. So it's pretty accessible. The coolant hose there, your water pump intake hose. That's the next thing I'm going to hook up, get my hose clamp done up on that. If you've got those constant tension, I keep calling these constant tension hose clamps, these ones that look like that. Anyway, if you got those, just cut them off and put your standard threaded hose clamp on. The only thing with threaded hose clamps is you might have to retorque, if you likely ran into that. If I have to, whatever. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm not sure if I'm going to take the oil reservoir out or not yet. I'm just going to see how much I can get hooked up tonight. Get the engine bolted into the mounts and go from there. Alright, I kind of at a bit of a standstill again. Unfortunately, you got the engine bolted in there. Everything's coming together. Got the plug wires on and stuff. Then I found this coolant line that goes from that side of the throttle bodies. It sits like this, back up as a return line for coolant. I didn't realize it when I was taking it apart, but it has a broken plastic fitting. So I traced it to this manifold looking thing, and it is that fitting right there. But then when I took this these two hoses here go to your cylinder heads, and then the other two hoses, that one's return and that one's supply, I believe, to your throttle bodies. No, I think these ones go to the throttle bodies. One of those goes to the coolant reservoir. One goes back to the throttle body's feed, and one's returned from the throttle body in there. Actually, here's the one that goes to the throttle bodies, and that's returned to the throttle bodies. And coolant reservoir, and I think we got supply on there. But I've got all the hoses. There's one there. These have the spring clamps that go onto the engine, and then they got those constant tension clamps like this on here, and these are all crispy. It just didn't take anything to break them. So I was kind of expecting something to break on this job, like, because it's plastic now, it's whatever this sled is, 7 years old, and it's been through so many heat cycles that usually that's what happens. You end up breaking some wire connectors or something because they kind of get warped and stuck together and they get brittle. But this is what the piece is that got brittle. So I'm going to try and get a part number off this and get another one. It's going to be kind of a pain to put it back in there. It just sits down in there. And the other thing that I might look at doing is, if I can't get one of these, I'm not sure what the significance of the design is, like all these passages, but maybe a guy could just build a little manifold out of pipe fittings and barbed nipples, maybe. So I'll see how expensive this is and what the availability is on it. I'm definitely disappointed in that, though, that it didn't take much to break it. So other than that, I can't really do a whole bunch more before I get that back in. I've got my oil lines on. I'm going to put the exhaust manifold on, I think. I'm not going to put the power valve covers on yet because I've still got to hook up some hoses to the power valve, like the vacuum lines are on the ECM. I got to put the ECM back in and hook all that up, and I don't want to block access until I get those all on there. So I don't want to get too far ahead. You can see those are the bolts from that suspension brace. There's one of them in there. So it wouldn't be a lot of fun, but it'd be possible to tighten those up with the engine in the frame, of course. The directions tell you can do it. So it's a little tight though. Get out from that side too. Alright, so I guess maybe I'll put my new Y pipe on there. Might as well. And then I think I'll have to go buy some parts and continue on. Here's where I'm at. A couple of things that I want to mention with going back together here is there's going to be hooks on your ECM, on the bracket for the ECM here, that hold all these holders are for your wires and your oil injection hoses. So just make sure you get all those right back in the same spot that they came from. It's pretty self-explanatory, the different sizes of hooks on this thing and holders. Then you got your connectors from your stator that go to the ECM right here. The yellow lock is on the one bigger connector. So make sure all of those are in the right spot before you put the ECM back in, because you can get at it from there. Then the throttle bodies, make sure your boots are on the right way, or else your air box and the throttle cable will bind and stuff. You'll know right away if you're putting them on upside down. Put your throttle bodies in, the air box should sit on the tunnel if everything's put together right. So I've got a bigger fuel filter, but it fits in there quite well. But I can't remember where the old one's smaller than that, but that's just the one I got that replaced it from Napa instead of going to the dealership for one. Chain case is apart so that I can get my jack shaft and chain back together. I put the jack shaft back in. Just had to tap on it a little bit to get the bearings seated. No big deal there. Y pipe is on, the VDX Y pipe. The bigger Y pipe, of course, doesn't have the dints, so I need to bring home a ballpoint Allen key. What size is this one? 6mm Allen with a ball point on it. I don't think I have one here to torque the inside bolts. So things are coming along really good. Another hour and a half or so, and I think it's going to be all back together. So I'm going to leave. The other thing is, if you're going to have your power valves recalibrated, I don't think it's an absolute necessity to do that, but my dealer can do it or the local dealership can do it in less than half an hour. I don't have the buds program to do it myself. I was going to just let it slide, but it's up to you. I don't know. The dealer said it's not a bad idea, but you don't really have to do it. But if I do, then I can have him reset the break-in mode as well and purge the, purging the oil lines I don't think is a big deal. You can just use summarization mode to do that. Anyway, so that's where I'm at, and I got the recoil back on. I wish my Cobra cord would show up before I had to put it back together. Other thing is, now that I've got these little CV clamp or boot type clamps off, I am going to be replacing those with fuel injection clamps, which are these ones. So you can just get these at your bin at Napa. I'll be putting those on the fuel filter, so the next time it needs to be replaced, it's not a big deal. Just take the clamps off. It's not those one-time use clamps. I'm going to prime the fuel system by just filling the line with fuel. It'll go back down to the injectors. So that's how I'm going to prime that, so I don't have to pull this thing over a million times to get it running again. I think I need some antifreeze, which I forgot to pick up. Anyway, so that's where I'm at tonight. I'm just going to pick away at it and see how much more I can get done. I'm almost done here. The chain case cover back on. Got the fuel tank on and the dash on. That's all pretty easy. So just the thing is, make sure that your plastic covers here are underneath the nut. They go on, and that goes on. It's a little bit tough. I'm going to fill the chain case, and the chain case oil. I know there's a lot of guys, especially with diamond drives, that are it's kind of a controversial thing. What kind of oil to run in the chain case? You can run ATF in these. You can run the BRP stuff, the BRP oil, of course. I'm not really sold on the BRP oil. What I'm going to run is I've just filled a squirt bottle up with. This is TO4 drivetrain fluid. It's for Caterpillar machines. They run it in drivetrains in big heavy-duty transmissions, and they run it in chain cases and skid steers and chain cases and graders. So I think that it'll be just fine for this chain case. It's pretty sticky stuff. The stuff that came out, I had it filled with this stuff to begin with last time I serviced it. So here we go. Just gonna fill it back up. I think I've got enough in the squirt bottle. Might have to go get another half a liter or so. Doesn't take much to fill this. Measured in ounces. There we go. She's full. Better get a catch underneath there. So I didn't see any major wear. I've been running a couple seasons with this oil. I replaced the chain case oil when I first got the machine. Put a couple seasons on it, and when I had the chain case off, there was just normal wear from the chain. The chain wasn't extra loose or anything, so I'm not at all worried about running this oil. Like I say, it works in heavy duty stuff. It'll work in this just fine. It's 10 weight TO4 spec torque force, Chevron torque force oil, and our jack shaft torque on the jack shaft bolt is 35 foot-pounds, so you can just set your park brake when you're torquing that up, or you can. I had the cover off when I torqued it. I just put a screwdriver in the chain against the sprocket to jam it up because I have a broken brake lever and I couldn't put the park brake on. So there's a little bit more, another couple steps closer. Got my new fuel filter on, and these are the new fuel injection clamps that I've put on there, so I can get that hose off, replace that instead of having to cut these style of hoses off. The other thing that I'm doing is this is the barometric pressure sensor hose that goes to the ECM, and ever since I've had this snowmobile, the nipple for this going into the air box has been broken. and it was actually melted over. Part of the plastic nipple piece was in there, or the barb fitting, and it was melted together to the hose, so that's not a good thing. And a fellow that I ride with, one of my riding friends, always brings that up when he notices it, that you want that going to your air box. Unfortunately, the air box, it goes right there. It was where the hose attaches on a plastic barb, and that was broken off, and it was still stuck in the piece of tube off the ECM. So it took me a while to figure out where it goes. You could just barely see where it was broken off. But what I've done is taken a vacuum fitting, and it's just from a package of generic vacuum fittings I got at the parts store off the help shelf. I just drilled it just smaller, like the next drill bit size smaller, so that the barbs on this, because it's barbed on both ends, will fit in there and hold it in, and it's really solid. I'm surprised. And if it ever breaks off, it'll be easy to just knock the old broken off piece out and put another one of these vacuum fittings in there. So I'm glad that I got that fixed while it was out. I didn't have to epoxy it or anything. That was really easy to do. Just kind of tapped it in there, and the plastic was resilient enough that it expanded out. I'll probably take this horn off and put it into the hood and then put it on the proper way. But all I got to do now is torque up my Y-pipe bolts, and I think I got to modify the spring connectors on here. Make sure I'm just going to bend them back a bit, because I guess that the springs are a little bit too long. These mounts, these are too long for the springs, I should say. So I'll show you what I'm going to do there when I get the pipe ready to go. I'm in a bit of a hurry tonight. I haven't been filming much, but it's kind of boring stuff anyway that you guys all probably know how to do anyways. But the BDX Y pipe, you need a long Allen socket to get in there. An Allen key. I had one around here, but anyways, I wasn't able to torque the inside ones. I just had to kind of do it by feel. The outside ones, it's 2 increments. I think you go about 60 inch-pounds, then you do a final torque of 25 foot-pounds. The reason why I'm in a hurry is I'm trying to get it down to the dealer. They're going to recalibrate the RAVE valves. If I can get it down there tonight, they can do it tomorrow morning. So I'm going to try and get it going. I'm just torquing my clutch up. So the clutch bolt, I got my holding tool in there, and I'm going 90 foot-pounds on this. I've been reading anywhere from 70 to 90 on the forums, but I think 85, 89, or 90 is what everybody's kind of saying. So just about there. There we go. That's torqued. Then I just got to get the hood back on. Apparently, if I leave the cover off the RAVEs, they can get in here for the calibration, put their buds program on and do that. Since I have to pay them to do that anyways, I'm going to get them to put it into break-in mode too. So from here on in, guys, I think you pretty much will have it wrapped up if you're pulling the engine. I hope whatever I did was beneficial and helped out. I'm going to see if I can get this thing started tonight. Here, I'm just going to put the hood on next. I've got the clutch on. I put the can on. The other thing I was going to mention with the BDX Y pipe is a friend of mine warned me about this, that the springs, like you can see that spring, there's not much tension on it. So I was bending these back, and I did, and these springs have a fair bit of tension, but I don't think it's enough. So I may have to try to bend these hooks. I bent them out like this, so they're going to get shorter, but as they go out, it's going to compound your length. Or the other thing is I'll get a spring that's got a one coil less, or a couple coils less. I was going to get shorter springs, but the parts store was out of them when I went and checked. I'm not worried about that right now. I want to get this thing going because I'd like to go for a ride this weekend. Just filling up the antifreeze. So far I haven't seen any leaks or anything. And I'll keep you posted here when I fire it up. Hopefully she goes right away. I don't want any issues. I want to get this thing, I want to get on the snow here. The skins silencer comes with directions. You can see the springs are nice and tight on this thing, solid. I'm gonna have to get shorter springs for the Y pipe. Anyways, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. It comes with directions on how to, when to put the pipe sensor in. Mine's clear. I might put a zip tie on there later. Just got one bolt in the bottom. It's super easy to install, and I think I'm looking forward to having the quiet sound again. Anyways, guys, putting the wings back on and the hood back on is pretty simple stuff, and then I'll show you if it starts or not. Okay, we're back together. Took about 3 pulls to get the engine to start the first time, which is fine, but it's always such a nicer feeling when it starts the first time. So I've summarized it, went through summarization 3 times now. That should purge the oil lines, and I'll show you guys. I'm getting 1 pull starts. summarization mode, there's lots of good videos on it. Basically, you want your odometer mode on, not trip mode. Hold the S button and toggle your high beam switch there a bunch of times really quick like this, and just in a couple seconds it'll come up on summarization mode. Hold the set for about 2 seconds I think, and then it'll say oil mode, and then just let it run until it stalls. Just did that 3 times. So that's where she sits. I'm really happy with this. I'm going to call it, my part of it, just about done. I think I'm going to have to get some shorter exhaust springs like I was saying, and a couple finishing touches, but right now I'm in a hurry to get down to the dealer tonight, and he's going to go ahead and reset the break-in mode, and then I'm going to have the RAVEs recalibrated. I got my sled going yesterday afternoon. I took it down to the local dealership and they reset my break-in mode, cleared all the codes. I don't know, he didn't say what codes were in it. Anyways, they're cleared. And what else did you reset the TPS. So they weren't even going to charge me an hour. It's like half an hour to do it, so I thought it was worth it. However, when we went to sync the RAVE valves, the mechanic at the dealer said that they were a bit sticky, and it's this bridge here. I likely got bound, like, you know, it was, you know what I mean, it was crooked a little bit when I torqued the bolts down. I think these are like 29 inch-pounds or something is what you're supposed to torque them. So I found that too, when you push the valve down, it should return to center, and it wasn't. When I took the hood off this morning and started looking at it, they weren't doing that. You saw me clean them and oil them, so I know that it's not an oil or a carbon buildup issue. So that's one thing that I missed that I should have done when I put the RAVE valves in back at the house, is I should have tried to push them down, make sure they return, and then pull them up and make sure they return to center. So I took the nut off this side. I'll have to put that back on, and before I snug it up, I'll just make sure everything's moving freely. So dealer opens here in another 20 minutes or so, so I'm going to get this thing back together, get the hood back on and down there, and then he's going to reset the RAVEs. Some guys say you don't have to do it, some guys say you do. I just thought it'd be on the safe side for the, you know, a little bit it's going to cost me to do it. I think it's worth it. So that's where I'm at, and I'm hoping to maybe go for a ride this afternoon. It looks like it's sunny out. Maybe get some video for you there. So yeah, I'm just going to top up my coolant because it obviously burped since I warmed it up. Ran it through a heat cycle yesterday. The thermostat must have been open, so that's good, because it's hard to get the coolant in there without the hood on, or with the hood on, pardon me. So anyway, that's where I'm at with it. Like I say, I'll probably put some shorter exhaust valves on, springs on the exhaust there, and a couple little things I got to do. I'm probably going to rebuild the primary clutch this year too, but other than that, we're almost at the end of the season here, so I'm not going to be riding much, so I'm going to leave it the way it is until summertime. So I thought I better show you this. What I found here is, so the RAVEs returned to center, no problem, like I was showing you. As soon as I put that bridge on, it would kind of snap down over this side, and I think that it's just some built-up Loctite on the actuator there on the bellows that's making it bind, because as soon as I tighten it up, as soon as it gets tight, the bridge over top of that, and see there's a bunch of Loctite built up there. Pretty sure that's my problem, so I'm just going to clean all that off. And you'll notice that, of course, make sure you put this on the right way. It has its marked top, but these are slightly ovaled, these holes, so I'm just going to clean those out really good, and I'm going to clean off all that Loctite on there really good, because the RAVEs are free, but as soon as I torque this up, they bind again. So I got to figure out what's going on here. Okay, here's what it should look like when you're done, or here's what it should act like, I guess you could say. Push it down, comes up, pull it out, goes back down. So what I found is every time I torque this nut here, see, I still got a little bit too much Loctite on it. So just be careful, just put a dab of Loctite when you Loctite these in. There was some on the bottom, and it was just enough, you know, Loctite's flowed down and pooled on the bottom of the thread, and it was just enough to make this bind. As soon as I loosened it off, they came free. As soon as I was tightening it up, they'd bind again. So the bridge was binding, kind of pulling that over a little bit because there's some Loctite in the hole, making it kind of oblonged. So I'm leaving the cover off, because when the mechanic's going to have to come in, he unhooks the vacuum line to the RAVEs, and he's going to come in and he's going to push this down. Then he'll hit the buds, program the button on the buds and say RAVE valve closed. Then he'll pull it all the way up, and he'll hit the button that says RAVE valve all the way open, and then let it go back to center. RAVE valve's neutral. So 3 settings there. Goes really quick. It'll only take him a couple minutes. He can reach through the side panel there. So I'm going to put the hood back on, and just leave the vacuum line off. I'm leaving the RAVE cover off, of course, so he's able to do that. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I told you everything that I found on this, so that you can save yourself some time if you're doing this job yourself. So I just wanted to take this time to thank my 70 subscribers now. I know this channel is in its infancy right now, but without you guys, it wouldn't even get started. So thanks a lot for subscribing and watching the videos. Give me a like if you don't mind. And also, I got new builds coming up. I'll do a short on one of the snowmobiles that I'm going to be building here, and it's going to be a good one. It's an older sled, but it's going to be a fun build, and it's going to be a fun sled when it's done. And then I've got trucks and all kinds of stuff that I'll be building if you guys are into that. A couple Dodge Cummins trucks and stuff. So just stay tuned if you like this kind of work. So this was just, I thought I'd take you with me on a snowmobile rebuild, but the next one's going to be a custom built snowmobile. Like, I'm going to be putting Skidoo suspension on the front. It's going to have a custom skid, everything. So if you guys are into that kind of stuff, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.